So if the Indiana Fever woke up tomorrow morning and said, enough of this Christy Side stuff, let's replace her with a different head coach, do you think their first call would actually be to Cheryl Miller? Welcome to the Underrated Pod North America. I'm Dave DeBond. Thanks so much for tuning in. The topic of today's conversation is really all about whether or not Cheryl Miller would want and would be a good option as a potential replacement for one Christy Sides as the head coach of the Indiana Fever. Now, we can go back a couple weeks and look at what happened between the WNBA All-Stars and the USA basketball team and come to the conclusion that Cheryl Miller certainly in a all-star style basketball game certainly understood how to get the most out of her team. But to actually be a head coach and go through the day in and day out wear and tear of being a head coach in the WNBA, which of course is something she did a very long time ago. In fact, during her record with the Phoenix Mercury as their head coach, she went 70-52 as their head coach. Actually took them to a championship game in 1998 where the team ultimately lost. Look, I think Cheryl Miller absolutely knows her X's and O's. And I think maybe even more importantly than that, she understands how to get the most out of the players she actually has on her team. Yes, I think it would be very interesting to see a Cheryl Miller take over a Caitlin Clark-led basketball team. Do I think it's going to happen this year? Probably not. And do I think it's going to happen next year? Probably not. My guess is that Christy Sides, if she's not able to, at the very least, get this team into the playoffs this year, will be out looking for a new gig. Look, I think Christy Sides does some things well, but what she doesn't do well and hasn't really proven at all, at least to this point, is understanding the true talent that she has with one Caitlin Clark on her team. Clearly, there is so much more Caitlin could be doing from an offensive scoring perspective. I've been saying this all season, and things have gotten a little bit better where they actually have a couple key sets which are designed to actually get Caitlin Clark the ball. But if you go back and you look even at the last 5 games, you will see that the overwhelming majority of offensive production that Caitlin Clark has very little to do with the actual offensive sets that were designed by Christy Sides. I think that's the big difference if you're a Indiana Fever fan you would have with a coach like Cheryl Miller. Now, trying to get Cheryl Miller out of retirement and into the day-to-day life, if you will, of being a head coach in the WNBA would probably prove to be a little bit more difficult than you might imagine. My guess is if Cheryl Miller wanted to be a head coach in the WNBA right now, she could be. My guess is that Cheryl Miller actually doesn't really want to do it day in and day out. All right, I want to know what your thoughts are on Cheryl Miller potentially someday coming back and coaching, and would she be a good fit with the Indiana Fever? Cheryl Miller had a lot of comments and statements that she made before and after the WNBA All-Star game. And one of the points that she made is a point I've also been making, which was pretty simple, which was the new deal that the WNBA is basically being forced to sign by its big brother, really big brother, the NBA, is the $2.2 billion deal with various networks over the next 11 years. I believe, as well as Cheryl Miller believes, that there was significantly more money on the table for the WNBA at this point. I think if we were talking about a league that didn't have Caitlin Clark in it, then certainly I think a $2.2 billion deal would seem fantastic would probably seem more than the league's actually worth. But at this point, with the effect that Caitlin Clark is actually having on the game, the effect is that she's bringing in new viewers across the board. That is the big difference, and that is why the WNBA is certainly, for the foreseeable future, considerably more valuable than it was before NBA draft night earlier in the year. So, for Cheryl Miller's statements on this particular topic, I think she was spot on. She also said, some other things, which I'm not going to repeat on the air right now. But I will say I would love to see Cheryl Miller back in the WNBA in some capacity. I think it would be great if she was back as a head coach for at least a year or two. I think it would be great to see her as a head coach with the Indiana Fever as well. All right, that's it for today's Underrated Pod. I want to know what you think, North America. Please go ahead and drop in your comments. Hey, I also want to thank everybody for all your support. We're 12 months in plus on this project here at the Underrated. With our shorts and our long forms, we've cleared 1 million plus views. So I really want to thank everybody for all your support and tuning in over the past 12 months. For the Underrated, I am Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day. To the guitar riffs we go.
You've been listening to the Underrated Podcast with Dave DeBaugh, presented by Underrated.media.